Okay, blacklists. What blacklists are is they're a list of domains and IP addresses known for spamming or any other or any illegal or unfavorable activity. What a blacklist does is it blocks all emails from such senders at the mail server level. So that means that if you sent emails to a company that none of the recipients in that company would even see the email, it would get blocked at the mail server level, which is where the email gets distributed to the employees. So a lot of different blacklists exist out there, but there's only a few of them that are actually very influential. The most influential one is Spamhaus. Our experience with Spamhaus is that if you're on their list, one of your mail server IPs is on their list, about 80% of your emails are going to get blocked and not even seen in the spam folder by your recipients. Another influential blacklist is SORBs. So from a technical point of view, what basically is, it works a lot like a blacklist is a lot like antivirus software, where it gets installed on the server, the mail server, and then it receives updates on newly banned senders in the same way the antivirus software works, where the software is only as good as how current it is in terms of whether it's got the latest viruses or if it's got the list of the latest senders. These actually can kind of work in tandem, because one of the ways that emails are used for is propagating viruses. So these can kind of work hand in hand. So the way that the blacklists find out and decide which IPs and people to ban is they rely on the email recipient, but more so on input from internet service providers or email service providers, which is a type of feedback loop. So what happens is that an email provider will get an email to one of their what's known as a spam trap or honeypot emails and report it to a blacklist. Briefly, what a spam trap is an email address that's been dead for a long time. So if an email provider gets an email to one of these, it will typically report this to a blacklist such as Spamhaus, and then if this happens enough, where the sender is sending to a lot of spam trap addresses, then they will get added to their blacklist, and also the domains that are associated with the IP will also be blacklisted, so that the same domain can't be just used with another new IP and still get emails delivered. In some cases, when a user sees an email, they can report it to a blacklist. However, this is not seen as being that not well used, because anyone could take an email from anyone and report it, even if it was a spam, and that obviously has dire consequences on their for that sender. So to get around that, they're looking more at the telltale signs of a spammer, which is almost always that they're sending to lists of large lists, but also lists that have lots of long dead addresses in them. So if you get on a blacklist, any emails from that blacklist, that newly blacklisted address, will be blocked. That IP address will be blocked for any mail server using that blacklist. So this is the kind of thing that like if there's 1,000 servers out there that have a given blacklist, and you get on the blacklist with one of them, just one of these servers, then you're going to get blacklisted by any server that has this blacklist on it. So that's why it's so influential. It's basically you get blocked with one, you get blocked with anyone else that uses that blacklist. So to get into more about what spam traps are, they're also known as honeypots. And I believe that the origin of this term is from the story of Pooh Bear, or Winnie the Pooh. What happens to Pooh Bear is he's like any bear, he loves honey, and so to trap Pooh Bear, they put it in a pot that is I think it's bigger than it's smaller than his hand, and so he puts his hand in the pot and he gets caught with his hand in the pot and it's stuck in the pot trying to steal the honey. And so that's what essentially what a spam or honeypot address is. It's an address that's intended to trap people. And when an email address has been dead for a long time, usually more than say 2 years, this length of time that it has to be dead varies by the email provider, but it's never less than a year. It's generally the longer. I mean, if an email address has been dead for 5 years, then almost certainly it will be a spam trap. So what will happen is that when these email addresses have been dead for long enough, what will happen is that the email provider will essentially turn them back on or resurrect these emails, and then they'll start watching anyone that sends any emails to this address for any reason. Reason being is that if an email address has been dead for several years, it's highly unlikely that a person, an individual, would be mailing this. If it was one of their friends, they would have known long before that this address has been dead. But as in a lot of cases, you can't just say that, I sent an email to one spam trap, therefore I should be banned. Honest mistakes do happen. I mean, some people will be going through their lists of old contacts and maybe emailing people they haven't talked to in a few years, and yeah, one of the email addresses has been dead for several years, but that person obviously isn't a spammer. But the reason that this is a fairly useful way of trapping spammers is that when you're looking at buying a purchased email list, unless the provider of the email list states otherwise, our experience is that these lists have anywhere from 50 to 80% dead emails in them, many of which are honeypots because they've been dead so long. A good example is real estate agents, where even in normal conditions, about 80% of people who enter the business fail and quit the business within 2 years. So that, also with the fact that the U.S. real estate market in recent years has taken a major downturn, and there's, it's totally a buyer's market in virtually everywhere in the States, that this has forced a lot of people out of the business anyway. So we have one list that we've seen that's worth about $3,000. That's commonly held out there, and they claim to have 1 million addresses in it and so forth. But that one is one of these ones that's about 80% dead. Even in the list that's supposedly better maintained and so forth, and is getting up monthly updates from a company called Data Depot, who may or may not be the creators of it, but where we've sourced lists before. Even their list, if I recall, was somewhere in the order of 50 to 60% dead. So this is the telltale sign of when someone is spamming, is that they've bought a list. Usually a large list for not much money, and it's usually a consumer list. That's usually who spammers are going after most of the time, is consumers, because these lists are much longer. You can buy consumer lists in the millions of people, and that's where these honeypots are typically found. So business lists are not as susceptible to honeypots, although if you have, for instance, real estate agents, there's lots of them that will have left the business, but while they were in the business, they used an email address from, say, their broadband provider, or they used a free email account. Reason being is that a lot of real estate agents, they don't want to use an email address from their company, because if they happen to change real estate companies, like many of them do, then they don't have to leave it behind. So by having a free email account or one from their internet provider, that they can move from company to company and still keep all of their contacts. So those ones can be, business lists can have those as well, for that very reason. So that's why the real estate agent lists are particularly deadly, is that lots of people use these free or email accounts from their internet providers. In some cases, there's spam traps that are deliberately put out there on websites to trap people. There's there's a group that's called Project Honeypot, and what they do is they get people to donate their domains that they've bought to them, and then what they do is they put Project Honeypot will put various email addresses in sort of hidden on the pages that you on your website, hidden inside the code, and then if someone comes along that's just randomly harvesting email addresses from any website out there, eventually they will probably very quickly actually come across a site that does have these Project Honeypot email addresses, and then when they mail them, that's a sure sign that they've been web harvesting, which is technically illegal, and they can be reported to, for instance, Spamhaus, and get them blacklisted. Project Honeypot, they claim to monitor 77 million trap emails out there that are distributed all over the web, I would say mostly on personal sites, not business-related sites, and they claim to be able to monitor up to 590 billion trap emails.